you are, again, more context. You are married and engaged?
Yes, yes.
Okay. How did you meet your wife, and was she privy to a polygynous lifestyle before you, or did you educate her on it? And then your fiance, how did that work too?
Woo.
Beautiful people, welcome back to another episode of Who Can Relate. Today, as always, I have a very special guest, but this one is like extremely special. This is family. When I say this is my brother, it's not like brother, like, brother, like homie. This is like blood brother. It's my actual brother. I've recently called him the Black Matthew McConaughey. The most interesting man in the world, at least to me, in the best way possible. Some of his ways and mindset and just outlook on all things life has always had a serious major impact on me, again, in the best way. And I am just beyond honored to have him on the show. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my brother Kolade.
What's up? I appreciate that, son.
Welcome to the show, man.
For sure, man. I'm looking forward. It's been great. Watching the show and everyone's vulnerability and sensitivities and honesty. It's been really dope to watch it progress.
Okay.
So I'm honored to be here.
I appreciate the support, and I appreciate the all the insights too. I know you've been tuning in, and today we are going to be talking about a lot of interesting stuff. We share the same father. We different moms. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about fatherhood in itself. We'll talk about the relationship. I'm trying to think of a word to put it. Well, polygamy, for lack of a better way to try to phrase it. Oh yeah, we talking about that. Yeah, we talking about that. We were talking about it all. So I guess let's start a little bit more about you. Where you from?
Cool. I was born, where our father's from, south suburbs of Chicago, Midwest. We moved to Milwaukee when I was about 8. So I did like middle school and high school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which was good. It was good. And I live in Georgia now because I got sick of snow. I couldn't do another snowstorm.
That's why I live in LA. That's why I live
Yeah,
in LA.
man. I was like, why do people do this?
And then now you're in Georgia. How long you been in Atlanta again?
For about 18 years.
Okay.
18 years. So I'm a
Yeah.
transplant AT That's cool.
Yeah.
I dig it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. And you've done your fair share of traveling. Again, let's get into the most interesting man in the world. You've made jewelry, you've made art, you've made just, you name it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So right after high school, I took an apprenticeship with a guy, and that's a really wow. That's interesting. We're gonna get into that. So I met this guy, and actually I met him before, like a couple years before, and but he used to have these like community meetings and stuff like that, and I would always go because I was interested in communal things. So to give some insight, so I'm 46, so this is like 1995. So this is like, you know, Million Man March time. This is, Rodney King time. This is the predecessor to, the times that we're kind of in now. So I met him and I was helping him clean up after his shop one day, and he always had like a pocket full of dough. And one of my roommates was like short on their rent. So I asked him if I could borrow some money. And he was like, I can't borrow you any, I can't loan you any money, but I can give you a job. So yeah, so he gave me a job, and that started or continued, a journey of self-awareness, realization, entrepreneurship, so yeah, so I'm a goldsmith and silversmith. I would travel to art shows and festivals and conventions and colleges and, lecture on things. Yeah, so I started that, which was great. It gave me great freedom. Um, yeah, just great freedom and an incredible education, to navigate, LA and New York and Denver and, New Orleans and Houston and Miami, as a young man, and try to convince people that yeah, I really make this stuff. I know it's beautiful, but I made it like with my hands. Oh, you made this jewelry, so a
Yeah.
lot of that. It was cool. A lot of people.
And let's get into so you're a father of four?
I created 4 children,
Yeah.
and I'm responsible for more, more, more children.
Okay. Okay. Um and let's talk about fatherhood for a second and just how what our example was, and granted it was same father, but we had two different examples. Like Pops was more so in my life, it sounds like, than in your life, from what I know, and that's not saying much. So what was your experience as far as what your mindset and thoughts were about fatherhood then versus what they are now, and kind of how you've navigated through it? Did your mom help? Other influencers, did they help?
For sure. So I would say that coming into probably all the way through high school, I had really no concept of fatherhood. None of
Mm-hmm.
my friends had fathers. My mother has an younger brother, which my uncle. So
Mm-hmm.
he was a fatherish, father figure, but he didn't live with us. He wasn't in the house. And since none of my peers had that, then I really had no idea of it.
Yeah.
Like the good, the bad, or anything. Because fatherhood isn't just about the children; it's about the relationship that the man has with the woman. That's also like
Mm-hmm.
fatherhood. That's a
Yeah.
certain responsibility, because not only what you tell your child, but also what you demonstrate. So what your
Mm-hmm.
children, how they see you handle things, how they see you
Right.
handle relationships, how they see you handle money. How they see you handle yourself, how they
Mm-hmm.
see you handle them. All of those things, kind of encompass fatherhood. So I didn't, yeah, I didn't have any, insight into what that would be. So it wasn't until actually the guy that that I learned how to make jewelry from.
Mm-hmm.
So he was married and had been married, since he was like 20 years old. He had children in my age, some a couple older, a couple a little bit older, some a little younger. And that was the first time I was around a father,
Mm.
like around a father with a family, a man that, and as I'm so appreciative of him, Babo Saji, I'm probably gonna send him this so you can check it out. But
Yeah.
and definitely his kids, and they're still together. They just celebrated like 50 years of marriage
Mm.
uh
Wow.
recently. I think his birthday is coming up. But that was the first
Wow.
time I saw it, and I'm so appreciative because he was really open and honest with me. What I mean? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times adults want to shelter children, forgetting that you're not going to be a child for much longer. I mean? It's a slim thing between like 12 and 18 or 12 and 20. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's not a
Yeah.
lot of time. And share with me like the ups and downs, the importance of fatherhood, the importance of marriage, the
Mm-hmm.
importance of persevering. You know what I mean? The idea that your wife is always going to get on your nerves. So what?
Yeah.
Like so what? You have to deal with that. That's part of your level of growth. Yeah, so that was really phenomenal. And
Mm.
we're still cool, like to this
Yeah.
day. Like, yeah, we're super cool, super cool. He's one of my
Yeah.
favorite people, and hopefully I'm one of his. But yeah, that was my first look at it. So then I began to think, okay, my role, like when I first, even before I had children, before I even met their mother or anything, as a kid, I me and my mother were having a conversation. I was about 11 or 12,
Mm-hmm.
so like right around sixth grade. And she was suggesting that I call our father. She was like, "You should just call him." And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why she suggested it. Like, I wasn't. I don't recall like going through anything. I think it was just in her mind because as a single mother, they're often told that, hey, you need a man in a boy's life.
Right.
And that's
Right.
valid. It's totally valid, and I can say that that's true. It
Mm-hmm.
is beyond important. Um, so she was trying to encourage me to do that, and I did. I was like, I thought that with no malice, but I thought that it was his responsibility to, cultivate a relationship with me being like 12 years old. I just
Right.
had that insight, like, I
Yeah.
think you should be calling me. It's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah.
And I kind of left it at that. um, and then I remember laying on my grass and thinking um, about that, about the idea of that. And I knew I was like, I told myself, I was like, when I become a father, I'm going to be the biggest influence in their life. That's what motivated me as a in relationship to, being a father.
Mm,
And then I realized as I got older, I started looking back on men that played fatherhood roles for me, men that invested in me, men that talked to me, men
mm,
that shared themselves with me. You know what I mean? Men that were honest with me. Like that was so important.
yeah.
Um, so, I've looked to do that myself.
Mm,
And some of these men, some of them I've had significant relationships with. Some were shorter relationships. But each one of them that I've talked to since, and being an adult, I've shared with them how important and how thankful I was, for
mm.
them sharing themselves in that way. And I do that in my own life. That's why I said I'm responsible for many more children. Like I created four, but a person would think I got 20. You know, because I'm
Yeah.
always like, this is my son. They always call me Baba, which is, Yoruba word for father.
It's interesting because I had a similar mindset as well. Not maybe so much 12, but at a certain point in time in my childhood, I remember thinking like, I can't wait to have kids so I can be the father that I never had. That I can create the family home environment that I never had, that I always craved. But my relationship with Pops around that age, and more context for everyone, Pops had you at 19, right? He was 19.
Something like that.
Yeah, 18, 19. He had me at 33, right? So you would hope that he had learned his lessons, but it's yeah, that's not the case here. But for me, I remember, you know, barely talking to him on the phone, and I remember thinking like he should be calling me, like I'm the child here, right? He's the parent, he's the adult, but he has this like, I don't know if it's like an old school black man thing. I don't know what it is, but it's like, I'm your father. You should be calling me. It's like this entitlement. I still don't understand it. But nonetheless, I remember, you know, for me, my childhood was, I had a lot of hope for us and me and him in that relationship with constant letdown. And so therefore, after years of constant letdown and disappointment and saying he'll show up and not show up, I started building resentment. That resentment turned into anger. That anger turned into dismissal. I pushed away and tried to protect myself. And I remember we've had a couple of conversations about this throughout the years and throughout the decades, really. And one conversation in particular, I remember I was in my, I believe I was in my like late teens, early 20s. And I remember I was just frustrated and I was like, I'm good, with Pops kind of thing. And I remember you were telling me, look, I hear you. I respect it. I'm not here to try to change your mind. I'm just going to let you know.
I understand it.
Yeah, yeah. That too, right? I get it. But at the end of the day, we only get one father.
Yeah.
And whether we can learn from them in a positive way or in a negative way, we can learn from their good or their bad, their mistakes and their benefits in life. But for me, that really hit me because I'm like, I guess in my mind, not that I was ever trying to replace him, but I was just trying to remove him. Like I came to that conclusion. Like, but that conversation we had was so impactful for me because I was like, you're right. We only get one father. And so I'm going to take the mistakes that he's made. I'm going to take what he didn't do and kind of try to do the opposite based off of that. And even now more so understanding where I'm at mentally in my mindset is to repair and not repeat, right? To try. And by doing that, it's heavy in the understanding where he comes from, understanding his upbringing, his childhood, his relationship with his parents, etc. And so when you can do that, I really, same thing with my mom, I really started to understand and really in a lot of ways empathize with a lot of the things that he wasn't doing. Not that I was condoning or making excuses for the wrong, because there was a lot of wrong, but I understood some of the things that just confused me. And part of that was his lack of vulnerability, his inability to be transparent, his inability to just show authenticity, right? He's got this perception of like this facade that he must put up at all times because God forbid if someone were to see me as me, this whole thing. And I'm like, Pops, you got to understand, man. Like, and you can feel, again, now that where I'm at, I know you've been here for a while, mentally, is we know deep down that he needs love. He's alone and he's lonely, right? Two different things. Because he's really not alone. He's always got someone, but he's lonely, right? And I just see him as someone who really can't tap into the vulnerability side, who's someone who really can't let people in.
Yeah, and I think that like everyone goes through disappointment, and I think that's something that maybe he has not learned
Mm-hmm.
is to really demonstrate grace,
Mm.
right? Like grace is important, and
Yeah.
people don't even give themselves grace. People really beat themselves up for mistakes that they make as it relates to he and I's relationship versus you and his relationship. Is that because he was absolutely not there? Like I had maybe 5 interactions with him before the age of 21.
Wow.
So um
Mm.
I didn't, like, you almost can't miss what you never had. Yeah, so I didn't have it. So by the time he and I began to really interact, I had already begun my own healing. So I was able to um offer him some of my understandings, whether I told him
Yeah.
directly or even just
Mm-hmm.
demonstrated it.
Mm.
So yeah, so I'm really thankful for that.
How did that go, really quick, bro? How did that go when you were demonstrating or explaining to him? Because I've tried. My delivery system was terrible. I came from a place of attack and demand, more so than open mindedness and acceptance. So how was it with that dialogue?
Because he has this fortress of an exterior, he really didn't open him all the way up. He wasn't like,
Mm.
thank you. You know what I mean? So I just gave it to him. And what I told him was that I love him, that I appreciate him as a human being, and I forgive him, and I want us to have I forgive him, and I want him to forgive himself, and I want us to have,
Mm.
a good relationship. And he just kind of like nodded. I don't even really remember what he said. But I just tried to, yeah, I mean that's how like vague and like it
Yeah.
probably felt so weird for him,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
to have that. I think he has had some friends, like in over the years. But even still, that's probably to a distance where they probably get through the first wall, as
Yeah.
opposed, but not through the second, third, fourth walls. Because
Right.
he got walls, lasers, a moat, some
Yeah.
Rottweilers, you know what I'm saying? Like he is like snipers on the
Yeah.
towers, you know what I'm saying? He was like not letting nobody get in.
I mean, it's beautiful that you were able to be in that space, especially at a younger age. It took me years of therapy, years of journaling, years of talking to other people about it. And it just took me, the biggest thing and the longest that it took me to get over was that level of forgiveness. I think for me, because I had, unlike you, which you had 5 occurrences, I had plenty, AKA he had plenty of opportunity to find his role, right? To have a place in my life, to build a relationship. And I just realized as I got older, like he continued to fail and fail. So I held him to a certain expectation, which is, I guess, shame on me. But at the same time, I'm like,
Not really. It's reasonable to
you
expect a
know,
man to be a father. I mean,
yeah, I don't think it's that hard to ask. Yeah, but I guess it is to some people, and to each their own. But for me, that level of forgiveness was very, very, very difficult for me. And I think I'm there now. I'm definitely way better off than what I was. And maybe if it's not so much forgiveness, it's definitely acceptance, right? It's definitely an understanding of, different times. Maybe different women bring out different sides of him. I don't know, but there's some things that I wish I can understand a little bit more. I'm trying to figure out to this day how to have that dialogue with him if we ever could. But yeah, because like I said, for me, when I first had this conversation in this totality, 2009. So I was 22, and I remember it was late at night, and he had been in my mind because we hadn't talked in like a couple years, like 4 years, I think, at that point. And he had been in my mind. I had these questions because now I'm a father. I'm a father of 2 years. So now I have questions like, how the hell am I supposed to do this? Like, can you give me something? Just give me some insight. And instead, I called him. It was like 9 o'clock at night. He was out, and I attacked. I just came from a place of attack, and I just demanded answers, and I demanded closure, and I demanded an apology. all things that I realize now I went about it the wrong way. But my intention was ultimately to start to build a relationship with him, because at the end of the day, and my mom was a mom who, and she'd admit this, she was a mom who would bad talk him. Even if he did bad, she would make it known that he was doing bad, right? And so I had this preconceived notion of him, this preconditioned narrative about him, which was all negative. It was all ugly. So I already have this, but I'm still like a young man trying to have a relationship with his father. Yeah, like yearning and craving this, regardless of what the narrative is in my ear. And there was just years of this, years and years and years. And finally, like I said, after trying to really sit with it, cope with it, understand it, I've come to a majority of a place of acceptance, working on the forgiveness thing. And I remember when I invited him to our wedding, so 2 years ago now. And so I invited him mainly because something hit me. I was like, this is going to be the last and only time for him to experience a wedding for one of his sons, a ceremony of love for one of his sons. Like, this is it. But, I think the older he gets too, the more the realization, right? The more reflections and the other R word I'll use is probably more than anything, the more regret he has, And so when I invite him to the wedding, it's funny because he wasn't surprised, which I would think he should be, right? It's just like, who, me? Like, oh, you got 50 people coming. I'm one of the 50. Like, damn, he was just like, cool. Yeah. Send me the info. I'll be there. And we were on the phone. I was surprised at that. And I remember hanging up and I was with Shay and I'm like, I got this confused look on my face and she's like, well, how did it go? And I was like, yeah, he's going to come he said he's going to come to the wedding. And she's like, oh, that's great. She's like hyped. And I'm like, I mean, he says a lot of things we'll see. Cause in my mind, I'm like, well, when I see it, I'll believe it kind of thing. But throughout the months that were to follow, and as we get closer to the wedding, he had bought his plane ticket. He was like one of the first people who booked the room at the hotel. And I was like, Pops, it's a pricey hotel. I'm not trying to manage your money, but like, you don't have to stay here. There's a couple of options we have for the guests. He's like, no, I want to be close to the venue as possible, this and that. And I was like, okay, cool. And he showed up. And it's interesting because I remember when I saw, because I still was like low key, like he'll miss his flight, or you know what I mean? Like the night before, I'm like, because we got there before everyone else. And the day he was set to arrive, because we had everyone's itinerary, I wasn't really thinking about it like that day. But I remember when I saw him in the lobby, because I didn't even, we're in Mexico, so he didn't have his phone. So I just like bumped into him. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, like you're here. Like you showed up.
Right.
Right. And in my mind, not that it totally dismissed all the hundreds of times that he didn't show up in my life from childhood, but it made it more easy to forgive at that point. Right. And so you showed up for that, which shows me a lot. And I remember we had this unbelievable, I'll never forget it kind of embrace, especially from him. And you'll know what I'm talking about when I get into it. We were pronounced Mr. and Mrs. We're walking down the aisle, getting ready to, go up the stairs, and Pops was in the last row. And at this point I had already played the sax. No one knew. He was shocked. And I remember one moment I'm playing the sax when Shay's walking, and I kind of peeped him out of the corner of my eye, and he looked like he was in a concert for his favorite artist. Like, he didn't even know the song, but he was just like with me, just, hyped. And so anyway, so we're walking down the aisle, getting ready to go up the stairs, ending of the ceremony. And he stepped out of the aisle and stopped Shay and I. And he came, open armed and to embrace us. And so we hugged, and he cried like a baby. I mean, like hyperventilation, can't get any word out, like, bro, like just lost it. And I remember there were so many feelings that I had in that, and emotions I had in that moment. But I remember the main one was like, I've never seen him cry. Like I've never even heard of him crying, let alone seeing him cry. And this type of cry, And to the point where like the photographer's up there waiting for us, kind of like, we're on a schedule. I don't know if this is cute and all, but come on, we got to go. And I was like, Pops, we gotta go. And he was frozen. He was like locked. You try to, like, when you hug someone, you're like, okay, it's time. Like, he wouldn't let go. He forgot the concept of time at that moment. And we had to like pull him, like, Pops, we'll continue this, but we got to go. And he was, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just so beautiful. And he was like crying and wiping his eyes. And the couple of days that followed, I remember thinking, how can someone who is just a wall of zero emotion, how could someone get to that point? And I remember thinking, that's what years and years and years of regret looks, feels, and sounds like. And I kind of think, he showed up at my wedding for all of us. Right? I think he showed up at the wedding for the last chance of redemption, the last chance of forgiveness, the last chance of like making up for lost time for years, and it was, again, a moment I'll never forget. And I know he'll never forget it. You can't talk to him about it now because he's like, oh yeah, it's beautiful. He plays it off, but I'm like, Pops, that was the inner child in you, man, that came out.
Right. Like probably 50 years of
Yeah.
trauma and sadness.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Like one of the reasons why what allowed me to interact with him a certain way is because I understood that it's bigger than us, and I didn't take it personal. You know what I mean? Like his traumas, he's experiencing what many people experience.
Yeah.
What many people experience, and no matter what the upbringing is, because he had his mother and his father. So he had them. They were there. Our grandmother's kind of, you know, distant also, and
Yeah.
I think we'll crack that, because they can't deny us now. They're getting old. They gotta just
Yeah.
look.
It
You
is
ain't
what it
gave
is
us
now.
shit. Give us it. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
exactly.
Like, come on now.
It's the least you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, at least you can do this.
Yeah.
Get over.
And I'm glad we got to talk about all that. I think it's going to help out a lot of people who, you know, are just raised without a father in some way, shape, or form, and maybe who are struggling with that ability to forgive, ability to accept, ability to move on, right?
Yeah,
Because
and
it's
also something else that I would just want to interject a bit
yeah,
is that the idea and the spirit of gratitude, because no matter
yeah,
how bad we think we have it, we could have it worse.
mm,
You know, it's
yeah,
levels to stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
like the glass being half full or half empty. I mean, there is a glass. So even if
hmm,
it's half empty, let's just put something in it.
right,
If it's not full to our satisfaction, let's just do
yeah,
our best to add to the situation as best as possible.
for sure,
Because it's all rough. It's all rough. Everybody's
yeah,
perspective is valid, and
hmm,
it's challenging.
yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of perspectives, let's talk about the perspective of love. Let's talk about the perspective of marriage, of unity, of oneness. Let's talk about polygyny. Let's talk about why you chose that. I remember we were talking a couple months ago on just polyamory and polygamy and non-traditional monogamous relationships. And I asked you, how did you get to this point? And you said, I knew it was necessary in order to give myself the best chance at this love thing. Like kind of tried everything else, and this is what really fit you. So let's get into it.
You know what? I even to go back like deeper than that. Like I had a lot of revelations in my early childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like started looking at cultural things and really just being honest with myself. So the idea of polygyny, I ran across that idea from a textual standpoint, even though inside myself I always felt it. With my eldest children's mother, my mother told her and her whole family that my son's going to have more than one wife. At the time, I was 23, and I don't know if me and my mother had had that conversation. That gave me a different level of insight because, like, when we talk about it, so it's not like I chose it because I don't think I chose it. Like, I didn't choose to be 6'3". I didn't choose, my skin color. I didn't choose, to bald sooner than later. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yeah.
think it's just, kind of like what it is. So, I know that could be different for a lot of people because we're in America, we're in a Christian environment, and it's always taught like monogamy is the only way. Even though now I realize that people are becoming more open to it and looking at things differently,
Hmm.
being really more honest with themselves about what
Hmm.
their true nature is.
Right.
Um, yeah, so that just gave me, um, some insight about it and allowed me to um, develop that. Now, how you communicate that in relationships becomes challenging.
Yeah, but before we get there, so how did your mom know that about you?
That's a good question. That is a good question. And what's interesting is that she's here visiting me now, so I'm going to
Yeah.
ask her that question. You can edit the answer in
Yeah.
because I do want to know, like,
Yeah.
how did you, how did she come to that?
So let's go into like you were going. How does one go about? Okay, so you're like this is me. This is what I subscribe to. How do you go about then dating with this in mind? That this is ultimately what you want and what you're looking for.
At this point in my life, because I'm married, dating is different. Like I have so much more understanding about myself,
Hmm.
which I think is important because it's necessary to be able to communicate effectively. And so many challenges in relationships come from really internal issues, incomplete issues within oneself, and then we bring that to another dynamic. Looking for
Right.
this other person to fill it in some way.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I have so many things kind of worked out within myself. And it's, at this point, my family's like, it's just different, like my wife is like, you like her? And I'm like, look, hey, I'm trying to, so my wife's take on it is that um, these women need a man. They need their children need fathers. They need that balance in order for them to fulfill their biggest destiny, for them to fulfill
Hmm.
their purpose, in life, to have like a holistic, life experience versus
Hmm.
like I got to get mine, you got to get yours type thing. That
Hmm.
or competition, it's more of a should be more of a cooperation.
So you are, again, more context. You are married and engaged.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So tell me about. Everyone's like, wait, what's that now? um, so let's talk about that a little bit more. So how did you meet your wife, and was she privy to a polygynous lifestyle before you, or did you educate her on it? And then your fiance how did that work too?
Whew.
Because and I exactly, I asked that, right, because I'm sure a lot of people when they hear polygamy or practicing a polygynous lifestyle, I don't want people to think, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, but it's not like you're like, I want my cake and eat it too, so I'm just gonna be I'm gonna be a polygamist. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like one guy, 9 wives, like, you know what I mean? So
It's not like that at all. It's man, this shit is deep. So she is probably more polygynous than me.
mm,
She is really, really assertive to not only with me, but even to her peers. Like, hey, ladies, I know all you guys, like you guys really need to figure this shit out. You're in your 30s, you're in your 40s. You're
mhm,
the idea of you finding this may sound like an asshole, but it's cool. The idea of a woman finding a 40-year-old man, because I'm 46, that's what we're talking about, or even like a,
mhm,
a fully adult man that is independent, that is funny, that is smart, that is attractive, that is talented, that
mhm,
is nurturing and caring and loving and sensitive. The idea that he's navigated his whole life and doesn't have a woman at this point at 35, like what has he been doing? Where has he been at
mm,
34, 32, 30, 29, 28? Because he was growing, he was developing, he's been charming, he's been funny, he's been attractive, So how does the guy get to be like 40 with no kids and no woman? And if you do find that unicorn, then what about the other 10 women that haven't? You know what I mean? And then it becomes
right.
a competition and some cattiness. If there was more of a cooperation, because men function like this.
Like what?
Function like men function from a polygynous standpoint. Like even Two Chainz say, I got a wife, a mistress, and a girlfriend.
Mm,
So we and most men, honestly can admit that they've dealt with more than one woman at the same time before.
yeah. Mhm,
You know, um, And most women can admit that they've been with a man that's dealt with more than one woman at the same time before. Whether they
Mm.
found out about it later, whether they were on the other side and they entered into this relationship where this man already had a woman or something like that,
Right.
that it exists, it just exists in a very unhealthy form.
Mm.
It exists in a very unnatural form, a form that leaves people scarred and hurt
Hmm.
and challenged and traumatized.
Yeah, and probably I'm assuming uh, it's led in an unhealthy form because there's a lack of communication. Hmm.
Yeah, and even a lack of growth and even honesty with self. A lot of people can become very complacent in their own development. And
Hmm.
most often it takes a level of honesty with yourself, like, hey, I'm healed. Or hey, I'm scarred, and I really need to heal. I really need to deal with trauma. I really need to communicate. So the idea of like therapy is more of a modern, it's a newer thought process. You know what I
Right.
mean? It
Hmm.
was always like you have to be crazy in order to get therapy. I think we're all crazy. I'm crazy for sure. But
Mm.
I'm the kind of crazy where I can recognize it and work to develop myself.
Well, something that you said too to me before is when it comes to like living in your truth, you said, I'm afraid not to live in my truth. I'm afraid not to be honest with myself.
Because we're spiritual creatures having a physical experience. So we can prescribe to the idea that, hey, this is life, and then when we die, we die. But we came from somewhere, and we're
Right.
gonna go back to somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is temporary. So
Hmm.
however people think about eternity, or however people think about God, when I transition, which is inevitable, I
Hmm.
want to move on to a place of like I did the best I could.
Yeah.
I was honest. I told the truth. I
Hmm.
I listened. I learned. I humbled myself. I
Hmm.
didn't I didn't trip. I tried. I really
Yeah.
gave it my best effort. And in order to give the best shot at any type of healthy relationship, you have to be honest.
Right.
Because how is she? Because I'm a guy, so I'm dealing with a woman. How is she going to be able to function if I'm not being honest?
Mm.
How is she going to be able to? How is she going to have a chance at satisfying me if I'm not giving her the answers to the test? You know what I mean? Or if
Right.
I'm not demonstrating that, hey, this is me.
Hmm.
So how can she say I love you if she doesn't know me? If I'm not
Right.
showing her me,
Right.
and then how can I
So
expect her to be honest?
right. So so with honesty, once you're now married and you're practicing polygamy, and now you at a certain point in time met your fiance. How
So I like the word polygyny.
polygyny?
Yeah,
Got it.
because polygamy is like really vague.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's really
Got it.
vague. So I can't speak to the other dynamics, the other poly lifestyle dynamics.
All right. So in polygyny, how did it work then meeting your fiance, and what was that experience like for everyone involved?
So yeah, so my wife and I both knew her. She had just hit me up and was like, like I like you, I guess for lack of a better term.
Mm.
And then I told my wife about it, because we communicate pretty well. I mean, there are some communication challenges just because, you know, uh, I would own them my own flaws, you know what I'm saying, my own growth.
Yeah.
Trying to be something that I've never seen before. So, bear with me is what I
Yeah.
tell her and my children. Like, hey, I'm winging it. I'm trying to figure it out. Be patient with me. I told her about it. And then what she did was she actually invited her to dinner like the next day. So that was cool. I really appreciated her openness,
Mm.
and her even, I could appreciate her initiative
Hmm.
in that dynamic. It's interesting because since she has apologized to me for that,
Mm.
right? Because she was like, I should have let you work out the relationship first.
Mm.
I should have let the two of you, kind of get to know each other and really cultivate it first. Let you vet the situation. That I think is constant communication. It's constant um, dialogue. It's constant, even self-assessment. you know,
Mm.
because like with any relationship, when you enter into a relationship with someone, then you get the love feelings, and then with the love feelings, there's a potential for hurt,
Mm-hmm.
for challenge, for growth. So in monogamous relationships, when you get with a partner, it compounds your whatever your issues are. So if you have traumas as a single person, when you get with someone, those traumas become highlighted or exposed. It's there've been some challenges for sure.
Mm.
But I'm always more of a glass half full type guy anyway.
Yeah.
And definitely I'm more of a there's abundance, in life.
Mm.
So I look to have like an abundance of understanding, an abundance of growth, an abundance of maturity, an abundance of love. I don't believe that there's a capacity to my ability to love.
Mm. So with your fiance, did she practice polygyny as well, or was this her first experience?
This actually is not her first experience. She's actually had some other experiences,
Okay.
which I would have thought that would have made things a whole lot easier, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. But no, yeah, she has, yeah, she has some experience with it.
And do the how does it work with the three of you? Do you all live together? How does it work? Time shared?
So no, for me, and I can imagine for other people, but I think in a polygynous dynamic, I think every woman should have her own space. So that it can eliminate the pettiness of what could exist.
Mm.
It allows us to continue to grow and develop.
So the three of you don't live together, but do you live with your wife?
Primarily, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to process, and I'm sure as everyone else is.
Oh, that's right. We are talking to other people.
Yeah, exactly. But again, for me, it's interesting to know, as I'm sure again for everyone, when it comes to polygyny, and again, I'm sure it's everyone's situation is different. Maybe there's one particular situation scenario where everyone lives together in one big happy family or one big happy house, whatever it is. But whatever works for you is at the end of the day that it's all that matters. When it comes to your fiance, because I'm also just trying to put myself in the mind of the audience. Again, 86% women.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try to ask on their behalf. Um, for your fiance, yeah, has there ever been a feeling of second? Has there ever been a feeling of, but what about me? Has there ever been a feeling of I need more, I need equal?
Yeah, I've heard it on both sides.
And how does that get worked out?
One, I've learned to listen well, and I'm still learning. I'm still improving my
Mm-hmm.
listening skills, because I don't know if it's so much literal as it is like an emotion, and trying to use language to articulate a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
more so than a specific minute, time, day type thing. Yeah, so I try to um, be sensitive to all of the dynamics, because even though they are very open minded, and I did not initiate this situation. You know what I mean? Like so for the female listeners, 86% of women that are listening,
Mm-hmm.
they chose me. it
Yeah.
wasn't like I'm out here,
Right.
because there's a lot of responsibility when you talk about marriage. It's not like dating. It's not like picking up people. It's what are the bills like? What are
Mm-hmm.
the relationship with the parents, relationship with the children? It's very holistic, and also it's not the purpose of, like, my daughter asked me one time, like, what's the difference between like a boyfriend and a husband? And I told her that a boyfriend is personal and a husband is for the family. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have a boyfriend, then that's you and him. I mean, I don't necessarily need to meet all your boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a husband, then now I have a son. Now you all are making children together. That person is now family.
Sure.
Um, so with any family dynamic, it's about really, everyone communicating about what their needs are, what
Yeah.
their wants, desires are, and then everyone else, um, being open and receptive to that.
So what happens if again, this I'm trying to understand from the audience perspective, because I already know the comments are coming in. What about this and how? What about this?
But we'll have to do a round two, and we need to get
Yeah,
to like all the other interesting stuff. I'm much more than just polygynous.
for sure, for sure. I guess maybe one more question with it. So, what happens if you want to step out for another woman?
Step out seems kind of vague, but if there is, um, a woman that says, "Hey, I like you," or "I like y'all," I want to,
Mm-hmm.
then it's just a conversation.
Okay.
We just talk about it. I mean, it's a little more than just a conversation because
Mm-hmm.
also I do practice a traditional African spiritual system.
Okay.
So I think in any marriage there has to be like a tiebreaker. So if people are Christian, most often they'll say, "Hey, well, what does the Bible say? If I'm a husband and I'm a
Mm-hmm.
wife, and if we're not getting along so well, or we see things differently, what does the Bible say about it?" Or if I was Muslim, I would imagine it in
Yeah.
a Muslim household, they would say, "What does the Quran say about it?"
Mm-hmm.
So we
Okay.
have a spiritual system that we practice and adhere to,
Mm-hmm.
that where we can agree that, hey, this is what this is what
Yeah.
this is. This is how we'll. And it's pretty comprehensive too.
Well, we'll put a pin in the polygyny conversation, and we can revisit another day because I know everyone is again probably still curious, but I want to move on to
Yeah.
yeah.
So sidebar.
Mm.
My mother just walked up, right? So remember we talked about editing this back in.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, you on the phone? Just pause it for a minute. Okay, so you remember when we were at that dinner with Kofi, Scope, all of them? Okay, and when you told them I was gonna have more than one wife, how did you know that? Her answer is, I raised you. Said she raised me to be like that.
yeah.
She said, because
Oh
that's
man.
what we need.
Mm.
Right. See, so I got it honest. So all
I
your
love it.
86% female listeners understand that my
Yeah.
mother is me. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
respect
not
it.
out here trying to be, I'm not out
Right.
here wilding out.
Right.
I'm not tripping. I'm a good guy. I can fix things. I can build houses with my hands. I
Yeah.
delivered three of my four children myself at
Mm.
home.
Yeah.
You know, I can
Yeah.
cook, I can clean, so I'm not just out sitting on the throne waving my magic wand,
Right. 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 Right.
having people bring me women.
Right.
Yeah, one of my friends said, well, it's like, well, you're like half a man. I said, no, I have to be twice the man.
Mm.
I can't be half the man because who wants to
Right.
deal with half a man?
Right. Yeah. Um, I want to make sure we also cover your program that you run for young men, the Rites of Passage. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so me and a few friends, about 10 of us or so, started a rites of passage program. We just finished our 7th year. So what rites of passage is it is a process for helping young people make the transition from childhood to adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very intentional process, which is something that doesn't really culturally exist in mainstream American thought process. It does exist in other systems, like I know that Jewish people have like a bar mitzvah and a bat mitzvah, you know what I mean, where they say, okay, this person is now making the
Mm-hmm.
transition, from childhood to adulthood. So what happens is that when men don't sit with boys to teach them about manhood, then we have grow up having to figure it out.
Right.
And we make a lot of mistakes with that. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
make children with that. Some people lose their lives with that. Some people lose their freedoms with that.
Sure.
And at the very least, it doesn't help to create a healthy environment because
Mm-hmm.
we just don't know. I mean, just think if
Right.
you would have had 10 men to sit with you
Yeah.
at 16, not even 18 or 20,
Right.
15, 16, where you learn how to change a tire, where you learn how to resolve issues, communication issues, how to identify traumas, how
Sure.
to cooperate with other young men, how to cooperate with other people, how to cooperate even within your family structure, how to
Yeah.
communicate, how to listen, how to learn, how to talk, just different discipline things. And it's been phenomenal. It's
Mm-hmm.
been phenomenal. So yeah, we started this program. We have kids from like 6 to 16. And when they hit puberty, we separate them. So from 6 to 12, they're together. Boys and girls are together, and we get with them like every other week, all throughout the year, minus school vacations and breaks and stuff like that. And then once they hit puberty, then we separate them. Boys with the
Mm-hmm.
men, girls with the women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because one, boys really need a safe space to express themselves. And when you interject female energy, then it changes things. Boys want to show out, and even when you interject male energy
Mm-hmm.
into certain teenage female spaces, then they want to, posture and maybe not be as open or as vulnerable because they want to save face to some extent.
Sure.
And I mean, we even do that as adults. So imagine a
Yeah.
14-year-old,
Yeah.
what you
Mm-hmm.
can expect. All these different hormones and stuff. So we separate them at that point, and then we get with them every Saturday from basically like January to June.
Okay.
Um, and then we deal with everything. We deal with history. We deal with like spirituality. The children learn weapons training. They learn how to cook, how to sew, some basic mechanic stuff, some basic household stuff. How to change a toilet, how to stop a water leak.
Hmm.
It's really holistic. And then
Mm-hmm.
for that last week, we take the boys to the woods and we go into seclusion for like most of the times for like 7 to 10 days, where
Mm-hmm.
we just go someplace and they just live, and figure
Mm-hmm.
out how to be. And
Yeah.
in those spaces, it's really profound. It's really
Mm-hmm.
profound. The type of growth that they demonstrate. So when the parents drop the kids off, like that during that last week, they drop them off, and then we have our graduation on like that Saturday or whatever Saturday it is after that. So we have them, like I said, about 7 to 10 days. When the parents drop the kids off this year, or really every year, the parents say the kid that I dropped off to you on last week is not the young man that I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
And they are incredibly profound, and it has an impact on the households at that point because now the children have a different level of expectation for themselves.
Sure.
So they start functioning differently, and they ask the questions of their parents, and they actually give insight to their parents. So I'm sure they learn things that their parents um, did not learn definitely when they were younger, and maybe still. So we've had probably about 100 kids
Wow.
going through the process since we started.
So if someone wanted to enroll their child, do they have to be in Georgia?
Yes, right
Okay.
now. Well, we do have brother sister organizations in other cities. We have one in DC, one in Philly, one in Tallahassee.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make sure if anyone's in Georgia or any other cities, I'll make sure I put in the notes how to get in touch for sure. So I end every episode with a round of rapid fire questions.
Ooh.
You have no idea what's coming. I got 5 for you. So question number 1 is, what's one thing you know you need to do, but you may be afraid to do it?
Uh, you know, okay. For the authenticity of the show, I really, 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 really want to answer this, right? I have such a unique perspective on fear. Like I
Okay.
really like attack my fears.
Mm.
So I can't think of anything that I'm afraid of.
Okay. Well, I guess more so like then how did you get to the point of that attacking fear as opposed to being afraid of it?
Got you. Now that is a great question. So, I mean, the other was good too, but this is I can answer it easier. Um, so a friend of mine had given me a book called The Mastery of Love, and basically it broke down all human emotion and experience into it's like binary, either it's love or it's fear. In my mind, I have this mythology about myself, which helps me, like because we all have an ego, and most
Hmm.
often it becomes the issue when our ego is misplaced. So I try to put my ego like in the right place,
Hmm.
and so in this idea, this mythology I have, like I think like I'm a superhero,
Hmm.
like I really want to be great, for myself, for my family, for my children.
Hmm.
So in that book, The Master of Love, Love and Fear, and then um, always want to be, I want to be victorious, and I want to win. Now, me winning does not mean anyone else losing. Matter of fact, I only believe in win-win situations. You know what I mean? I'm
Mm-hmm.
only going to participate in win-win situations. I'm not going to be in a situation where I win and the other person I'm dealing with loses, not
Right.
intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of not being able to accomplish something because of my own fear, like me stopping myself.
I mean, it's kudos to you. It's easier said than done. I know.
Let me
I
say this:
definitely.
it's a work
Yeah.
in progress.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
I have not, I have not mastered anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'm, so yeah, it's just the effort. I'm
For sure.
aware, which gives me a better chance.
Question number 2: Who is your role model?
I think it depends on in what arena, right? So if I would go with like historical figure, I often think about like Harriet Tubman.
Mm.
Now, I know that might seem like, I don't know, cliche. We always hear that name, but I emotionally take myself to the idea of walking from Georgia to Detroit
Mm.
with a baby or some babies and not having a map and not
Mm.
having food and being chased. Like that is,
Yeah.
like, wow. Sometimes I don't want to walk to the grocery store. I don't want to walk around my city,
Right.
let alone walk into a whole nother place, you know,
Right.
and,
Right.
and with no understanding.
Mm.
That level of courage and commitment motivates me. It
Yeah.
inspires me and it helps me to kind of, when I'm feeling like I don't feel like doing something or I can think about things like that. Like, oh shit,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love it.
I,
That's
yeah,
great.
if you could do that, I could do that.
That's dope.
So that's on that level.
Mm-hmm.
I think my mother's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the idea that, like I said, she was 16 when she got pregnant with me and 17 when she had me. That I was 16, I was 17. No,
Yeah.
no. So the idea to do that and keep me safe and keep me protected
Mm-hmm.
and to keep my mind safe, and then afterwards, like after just keeping me alive long enough but then still for us to continue to grow and continue to develop. Her
Sure.
commitment to growth and development is exceptional.
Yeah.
So she's definitely one of my role models.
I love it. Question number 3: What's the best advice you've ever received?
The first thing that comes to mind is I received some advice, but it was too late. but, but I still give it. And that was a guy told me, he said that young men should buy a house before they get married or before they get into a serious relationship.
Mm.
And yeah, had I had I gotten that advice, when I was younger, it would have changed a lot. It would have changed a lot. What I took away from it, because I just thought about it more and more, is that it gives a certain level of stability,
Mm.
for a man, and it also creates a certain level of respect that his woman would have for him.
Mm.
Like, I've already done this. I'm already stable.
Sure.
So it seems kind of archaic, and maybe we don't want to think of ourselves like archaic in that way,
Mm-hmm.
but we are archaic, and we want to be archaic in that way. Women want men to open doors to them. Women want to feel safe and protected. I don't care how strong she thinks she is. I don't care how independent she thinks she is. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what she does for herself. I know that is the case. I mean, that
Sure.
they do want to be nurtured, they do want to be supported, they do want to be held, they do want to be able to cry, and they want someone to get to the door first. If there's a burglar, they want somebody to kill the mouse. Like, they want
Yeah.
that type of that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And we want that from our women. We don't want our women running to the door with the pistol when somebody comes to the door. Like, you sit back, I got this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right. Right.
it's all good. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that for
Mm.
what it takes to like buy a home and provide for yourself as a man, it would help a man to work out so many of his isms on his own,
Mm.
even before getting into a relationship. So many
Yeah.
fears you would have overcome. He would have
Mm-hmm.
had an understanding about who he is and how he's going to navigate this world.
Sure.
And that is important proactively, in entering into a relationship, as
For
opposed to
sure.
now, you have to learn yourself and this other person that you've already committed to, and then maybe even made a child with. So now you have three
Sure.
people to learn and three people to deal with when you haven't
Yeah.
even mastered, your own needs in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was some good advice. I got it a little bit too late though, but
Mm.
yeah, that would have been a good one.
Question number 4: Oh, this is a good one. I like everyone's answer for this, especially in times like this. If you could create a new law that everybody had to abide by, what would it be?
Ooh, shit. The first thing that comes to mind, because just rapid fire, is mind your own business. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
really, like if everyone just really just worked on themselves,
Yeah.
just work on yourself, work on your own issues, work on your own traumas, work on your own shit, work on your own family, even if it's just not okay. Even if it goes beyond me as an individual. So I think I got my shit together. So now, okay, I have to deal with my own family
Right.
versus trying to tell someone else how to do what's best for them.
Sure. Yeah.
And just demonstrate that. I think that would be great if
Mm.
everyone would just, really deal with themselves from an honest perspective.
I mean, I'm sure we'd be in a better place if that was a law, and we all would be able to treat each other better as well. Absolutely. Last and final question: what does Kolade admire most about Kolade?
Oh shit. Yeah, I was not expecting that one at all. Whoa. I care, period. You know what I mean? Like I care, I care about people. I care about the world, I care about life,
Yeah.
I care about truth, I care about honesty, so
Yeah.
and that caring has been, a serious motivation and a catalyst for a lot of what I've experienced and a lot of how I've come to certain understandings is
Mm.
all extended from a care. Like when I first read about like slavery, I was like, oh wow, that actually happened.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I care about that. Let me learn more about it. Let me not just like ignore it, just go get a job. Like,
Yeah.
no, let me get deeper into this. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And you do care. As a matter of fact, that's a great segue into the next and final segment. It's a moment to acknowledge each and every one of my guests. And care is definitely a word I would use for you. You've cared to still involve yourself in some way, shape, or form, and you would take any shape or form that I would give after all these years to be in my life. And I can tell the genuine care. I can feel the genuine care. I can feel the sense of oneness that is us. That it's like you'll be ready to teach something that either I didn't even know I needed, but that I subconsciously was seeking, or I was just rambling off on some shit, and you were like, "Okay, well, let's break this down." I'll never forget this analogy you gave me. I was living in New York. I was all over the place mentally, trying to figure everything out. I was 21, 22, and you were like, "Look, there's like a slow down metaphor. You live in Georgia. At the time, I was in New York. If you were to drive from New York to Georgia, right, it would take some time. If you were to get in your car from New York, could you even see Georgia from where you're standing? No. Okay. So you got to get in the car, you got to drive, you got to make your way down the coast. Maybe you come inland a little bit. Now you're in Tennessee, and now you're going through different states. Now you're experiencing different surroundings, different people, different foods, right? It's all part of the journey. It's all part of the process, not just so much the destination. So one of the many things you've taught me, but I've actually referenced that example quite a bit on the show, and it's a testament to who you are as a person who not only cares but who loves deeply, and that's something that I admire the hell out of, and I can also relate to. I am extremely passionate. I'm extremely caring. I'm extremely intrigued and passionate about helping in any kind of way, and I know you share a lot of those same sentiments. So acknowledging you for just being that way, for being involved in my life, for being a big brother, and how fortunate I am to have that experience and that relationship with you. Despite how much time goes by, despite how much distance that goes by, half the time we talk is like, where are you at? What country are you in? What city are you in? What's going on? And what I want to acknowledge too, and what I appreciate so much is that no matter how much time of a gap, no matter how much distance of a gap, no matter how many years in between seeing each other face to face in person, every single time we talk, it's like there's no time lost. It's like we pick up either where we left off, or where we need to be, and it's this like, you don't have to speak about it language that's just kind of known, So I just appreciate you for you living in your truth, being honest and true to yourself. We all can take a page from that, and just really grateful and appreciative for you sticking with me, you riding with me no matter what.
Yeah, man, I fuck with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's cool. I'm honored, and
Yeah,
yeah, I'm honored. Like, life is good. Could be better, but shit, it could be a whole lot worse.
that's right. Yeah.
Could be a whole lot worse. So I
Yeah.
think it's it's just interesting to me, like even like having a brother
Mm.
and looking at like our differences, and our similarities, like
Hmm.
even in our demeanor. I'm pretty sure I cuss a lot more than you.
No, I do as well. I got a filter. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, well outside of that, cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
um but yeah, it's just it's interesting to me.
Hmm.
I've appreciated how you've grown. I can honestly say that have been times throughout our development when I've worried about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I've worried about you, like, wow, where is he going with this? I mean, I'm
Hmm.
not talking about like the Justin that your people know now. I'm talking about like the 18-year-old Justin, the 20-year-old
Right.
Justin,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, which is cool, but it's I'm pretty sure people worry about me too. Like, I don't know where this dude is going,
Right. Right.
and
Yeah.
it's cool. It's great. It's great. Yes, I appreciate you. I appreciate your wife.
Mm.
Your commitment and your openness and your honesty.
Mm.
Your vulnerability, because people can need to see that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's okay to
Yeah.
be open. It's okay to be.
Mm.
It's okay
Yep.
to be.
Yeah. Well, before I let you go, bro, one last favor to ask: if anyone is looking for a couple good books, maybe your top 5 go-to books that you'd highly recommend.
The Mastery of Love,
Yeah.
for sure. Another one, How to Argue and Win Every Time,
Okay.
by Jerry Spence. Now you're laughing. Some people think like how to argue every time. People like, I hate arguments. I hate arguing. It's not
Yeah.
about arguing at all. It is probably the singular most important personal development book that I may have read.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've read a
Mm.
few, but it talked about like communication and interpersonal communication.
Mm.
That arguing is that everything is an argument. Whether it's not just the yelling, but it's just the
Sure.
stating your case. So
Mm-hmm.
being able to hear someone else's case from a certain perspective
Mm-hmm.
and understand what your triggers are while listening, how to listen, how to hear is phenomenal. The Way of the Superior Man, is that it?
Yep. That's it.
I got that from you, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That was yeah, that was deep. That was a piece of advice I should have got,
Yeah. Right.
30 years ago. That changed a lot of shit.
Yeah.
I mean, is that okay? Of Water and Spirit
Mm.
by Malidoma Somé.
Mm.
Yeah, that is a good
Okay.
one. And fifth book, fifth fifth book. Um, I like Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
I learned a lot with that one.
Yeah.
And then the sixth book,
Yeah.
you didn't ask me, is the one I'm gonna write
Yeah.
the next 5 years. Write a book.
Dope. I'm here for it. And I know you've given me The Alchemist, of course. I know you've given me The Four Agreements, of course, by Don Miguel, who also wrote Mastery of Love.
Hmm. And then
So,
his son, he has a junior, right? So I turned. So just a
mm,
funny story. So, my wife was one day we were having an argument, right? She was having an argument because
you win every argument. Yeah.
I don't argue.
Yeah.
What I mean? At least I try not to. I mean, I really, really try not to. And what's funny is that so when I went to Nigeria, they told me my taboos, right? So when I got initiated, they told me my taboos. And one of my taboos is I'm not supposed to argue with women.
Mm,
Right. Now that's the deep. thing to go sit into a room that's like 80 African men ranging in age from 8 to 80, and they're only
Wow.
speaking Yoruba.
Yeah.
And based on the markings that came up when I was in the grove, they say, okay, this is your destiny. And these
Wow.
are the things that you should do for your destiny to help it work for you. And these are the things that are detrimental to you and your
Wow.
development. And one of
Yeah.
them was arguing with women. So I can't do that. It's like having a shellfish allergy and eating shrimp pasta. It's deadly
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was having a conversation with my wife,
Mm.
and I was like, well, I said, what are you afraid of? Like talking about the mastery of love, using some of that language. She's like, what do you mean? I'm not afraid of anything. Blah 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 blah.
Mm.
I said, well, you should read this book. I want to read this book. Book gonna tell me something. Blah 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 blah. Blah, right?
Yeah.
As soon as she read the book to kind of like prove a point to me, she immediately apologized to me. She
Mm.
was like, I'm sorry. And then since she has purchased probably 30 copies of the book and giving it to like all of her friends.
Wow. And this is the mastery of love.
It's the mastery of love.
Wow. Well, I hope I know you've lived up to the again, I call you the Black Matthew McConaughey, and when you listen and or read to Green Lights, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because you two are so similar. You know, more than half the book, I'm like, this is my brother, like like verbatim. Um, but you know, you just your life story is just fascinating, beyond fascinating. I know we could talk for another 2 hours and get a whole.
We didn't get into the dreams.
Right. I know. Well, we'll save it for the next time. And the next time we'll be in person for sure. So I appreciate the time, bro. I appreciate all the stories, the vulnerability, the transparency, the honesty, and just the wisdom, overall wisdom. So I'm grateful for it. I know everyone listening and watching is as well. And yeah, love you, bro. Just appreciate you.
Yeah, man, it's cool. So I wish I could have done it there. So I could have wore like a fresh outfit and shit, but we'll
yeah,
see. So.
We'll do it next time.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right, bro. Love you. Appreciate it.
I'll let you back. Peace.